Let's once again absorb ourselves in the fathomless depths of Sri Bhagavan's spiritual instruction. We take up in talks on the 13th of February 1937, dialogue number 359. At about 7:30 a.m., Sri Bhagavan was climbing up the hill after breakfast. Ananda went and prostrated, and stood up and said, "All right, I have had darshan. I shall return." Sri Bhagavan smilingly said, "Whose darshan? Why don't you say that you gave darshan to me?" At about 9 a.m., a devotee from Pune, Mr. Parkey, saluted Sri Bhagavan and read out his Ashtaka, 8 verses, praying to Sri Bhagavan for grace. The piece finishes with a prayer for quick liberation, Jatiti Mukti, instant liberation, instant freedom. And the devotee emphasized it. Sri Bhagavan said, "Mukti, that is, liberation, is not to be gained hereafter. It is there forever, here and now." The disciple said, "I agree, but I do not experience it." The Maharshi replies, "The experience is here and now. One cannot deny one's own self." The disciple said, "That means existence and not happiness." Sri Bhagavan explained, "Existence equals happiness equals being." The word mukti, liberation, is so provoking. Why should one seek it? He believes that there is bondage and therefore seeks liberation. But the fact is that there is no bondage, but only liberation. Why call it by a name and seek it? The disciple said, "True, but we are ignorant." Sri Bhagavan replied, "Only remove ignorance. That is all there is to be done." Let's go back to the beginning. Regarding the significance of darshan, Sri Bhagavan, in one phrase, in one sentence, demonstrates the complete humility that characterizes the egoless state, and simultaneously reveals the nature of the truth of the self and what darshan, vision, really is. Whose darshan, he says. Why don't you say that you gave darshan to me? Darshan means vision. We have to see him with his own vision. In that vision, there are no differences of bodies, and there is no falsely assumed individuality. What then remains? The self, of course. Why don't you say that you gave darshan to me? The self's existence is without differentiation. The disciple had said, I have had darshan. Who is it that has had the darshan? Obviously, it is supremely holy and beneficial to have the darshan of such as Sri Bhagavan. Who is to have such darshan? Inquiring like this, the body misidentification drops off, and along with it, the ego notion. All that remains is the darshan, the vision of truth. Then a devotee had read out an ashtakam, 8 verses, praying to Sri Bhagavan for grace. It says, the piece finishes with a prayer for quick liberation, instant freedom, and the devotee emphasized it. Sri Bhagavan graciously and compassionately explains to him, Mukti, or liberation, is not to be gained hereafter. It is there forever, here and now. It neither comes slowly, nor does it come instantly. It does not come or go at all. What is mukti? Whatever it is, Sri Bhagavan explains, not to be gained hereafter. It is there forever, here and now. What exists always? The reality is always. If mukti be not always, it is not real. But it is real. So what is always? What is forever? What is real forever is real now and here as well. There is no other state. There is no second reality. The devotee wanted it quickly, but the reality is timeless. If you find that which is forever within yourself and abide identified as that alone, you have your mukti. When Sri Bhagavan had said this, the disciple had stated, "I agree, but I do not experience it." From what perspective does he say he does not experience it? That standpoint itself should be relinquished. Sri Bhagavan replied, "The experience is here and now. One cannot deny one's own self." Existence is undeniable and doubtless. Existence, pure existence, devoid of name and form, is forever. Existence itself is mukti. Inquiry reveals the knowledge of existence as it is. How could the self not experience itself? Are there two of you that one would be lacking in experience of the other? The self is only one, existing always. It is the experience of itself. If you suppose yourself to be an individual, apart from this existence, of a different character, of a different nature, that is just the very thing to be destroyed by self-inquiry. One cannot deny one's own self. In one's own existence, there is absolute certainty. Know your existence as it is, and you yourself are the mukti. The disciple then questioned, "That means existence and not happiness." Sri Bhagavan replied, "Existence equals happiness equals being." Just as existence does not come and go, likewise in its true nature, happiness does not come and go. As you are the existence, you are the happiness itself. What comes goes. This does not come or go. This is. Sri Bhagavan continued to explain, "The word mukti, liberation, is so provoking. Why should one seek it? He believes that there is bondage and therefore seeks liberation. But the fact is that there is no bondage but only liberation. Why call it by a name and seek it?" When you believe that you are a bound individual, a limited ego entity, that which is your very existence seems to be a state removed, and that state is called liberation, or Turiya the Fourth, and by other names as well. Why should one seek it? Because it is not in your nature to be bound. It is not in your nature to be unhappy at all. So for the sake of happiness, for the sake of the actually innate freedom, you seek liberation. But how is it to be found when it is of the very nature of your existence and not removed from you? Inquire into the nature of the one who appears to be bound. There being no bound individual, no bondage will be found to exist. What remains actually exists always, and that is liberation. The fact is, there is no bondage but only liberation. This is what should be conclusively realized. How to realize it? Sri Bhagavan concludes by saying, "Only remove ignorance. That is all there is to be done." To reveal supreme knowledge, only remove ignorance. To find liberation, only remove the ignorant notion that constitutes the bondage. To know the reality as it is, Only relinquish the belief in the unreal. This cannot be difficult, for the unreal is unreal, merely imagined, and likewise all of one's bondage. It is the stuff of imagination. Cease to imagine, that is, cease to misidentify, and the self, your very existence, is the supreme liberation. And that lasts forever. It is unborn and indestructible. February 14th, 1937. The aristocratic gentleman from Lucknow has written to Mr. Paul Brunton that his wife has since lost that peace of mind which she had gained by her visit to Sri Bhagavan. So he desires that Sri Bhagavan may be pleased to restore the same peace. When requested, Sri Bhagavan said, "It is due to weakness of mind that peace once gained is later lost." How to attain peace? It is the same question as how to attain Mukti, isn't it? How to maintain peace. If peace would be synonymous with your existence, it does not require maintenance. What is the weakness of mind referred to by Sri Bhagavan? It's the belief in the mind's own imaginings, as if they were real, as if they were yourself. Only be done with that imagining, and peace is ever present. Mudaliar Swami, son of the lady who brings Diksha every day to Sri Bhagavan, related the following interesting incident. When Sri Bhagavan was staying in Virupaksha cave, Sri Bhagavan and Mudaliar Swami were walking together behind the Skandashramam site. There was a huge rock about 15 feet high. It was a cleft. A girl, a shepherdess, was standing there crying. Sri Bhagavan asked the reason of her sorrow. She said, "A sheep of mine has slipped into this cleft, so I am crying." Sri Bhagavan descended into the cleft, took the sheep on his shoulders, climbed up to the surface, and delivered the sheep to her. Mudaliar Swami says that it was a very remarkable feat for any human being. In the same way, He is manifested for us to pull us out. We got caught in the cleft of illusion. He carries you out. Mr. Subramaya, a college professor from Nellore, asked about Mukti. The Maharshi replied, "All questions relating to Mukti are inadmissible, because Mukti means release from bondage, which implies the present existence of bondage. There is no bondage and therefore no Mukti either." The disciple said, "The Shastras speak of it and its grades." The Maharshi replies, "The Shastras are not meant for the wise because they do not need them. The ignorant do not want them. Only the mumukshus, those who are desirous of liberation, look up to the Shastras, the scriptures. That means that the Shastras are neither for wisdom nor for ignorance." The disciple said, "Vasishta is said to be a Jivan Mukta, liberated in life, whereas Janaka was a Videha Mukta, liberated in the disembodied state." The Maharshi replies, "Why speak of Vasishta or Janaka? What about oneself?" There were many new visitors this day. 2 of them were speaking of Ganapati Muni in Sri Bhagavan's presence. Sri Bhagavan put in a few words in their talk. Some say that jnana and upasana are the 2 wings with which to fly to Mukti. What is jnana? What is upasana? Jnana is ever present. That is the ultimate goal also. When an effort is made, the effort is called upasana. When it is effortless, it is jnana, which is the same as mukti. After some discussion among themselves, a visitor said, "Some superior power must help us to shape," I think it's a type of replica for shake off the externalities. Sri Bhagavan said, "Who sees the externalities? Or do they say that they exist? If so, let the world say that it exists. Again, if the world is a projection from the interior, it must be recognized that it is projected simultaneously with the I thought. Either way, the I is the fundamental basis, knowing which all else is known." Another said that Ganapati Muni used to say that he could even go to Indra Loka and say what Indra was doing, but he could not go within and find the I. Sri Bhagavan added that Ganapati Muni used to say that it was easy to move forward, but impossible to move backward. Then Sri Bhagavan remarked, "However far one goes, there he is. Where is moving backward?" The same truth is contained in the mantra in Isha Upanishad. In reply to a query how Ganapati Muni became an Ashurakavi, an inspired poet, Sri Bhagavan said, "It is said that while he was making tapasya, Shiva appeared and gave him milk or honey to drink, after which he became Ashurakavi." Inspired poet. Let's go back to the beginning of these dialogues. The instruction started with, "All questions relating to mukti are inadmissible, because mukti means release from bondage, which implies the present existence of bondage. There is no bondage and therefore no mukti either." In what way are you bound? You who exist, in what way could you ever be bound? Who is there who would be bound or would attain to mukti? If mukti be the egoless, uncreated state, the reality as it is, then all questions regarding it are inadmissible, as the questions would undoubtedly be based on the existence of the individual, who is utterly unreal. There is no bondage, and therefore no mukti either. So what remains? If you suppose yourself to be bound, a limited individual of any kind, question, examine thoroughly, inquire, to determine the nature of that very one. And no bondage will be found. Only vast, illimitable freedom. The Self, which is Brahman. The question then arises, if there's no bondage and no mukti, no liberation, why did the Shastras, the scriptures, speak of it and its grades? That is, why do they speak of liberation and degrees of attainment, etc.? Bhagavan answers, the Shastras are not meant for the wise because they do not need them. The Gita makes the same point when it says that to an enlightened Brahmin, all the Shastras are of as much use as a pond when there is everywhere a flood. The Shastras are not meant for the wise because they do not need them. They are endowed with true knowledge, the knowledge in which one's own being is the knowledge. And he adds, the ignorant do not want them. Seeking their happiness in worldly ways, which will never succeed. They take no interest in what is said in the Shastras until such time that they turn inward, realizing the lack of success of the external search for happiness. Turning inward, the Shastras open for them. Taking the direction pointed out by the Shastras, they become that which the Shastras reveal, and then they have no need for them. So the wise do not need them, the ignorant do not want them. Only the mumukshus, those who are desirous of liberation, look up to the Shastras. They look to them for guidance. That means that the Shastras are neither for wisdom nor for ignorance. They're not for ignorance, because their purpose is the abolishment of such delusion. They're not for wisdom, because wisdom is that before which all words and thoughts turn back, unable to grasp, as it says in the Shastras. The disciple's next question was, the Vasishta is said to be a Jivan Mukta, whereas Janaka was a Vidaha Mukta, liberated while alive, liberated in death. It's strange you should ask that, because Vasishta and Janaka both would hold no such differentiated concept regarding their mukti. Sri Bhagavan turns the disciple inward, though, saying, why speak of Vasishta or Janaka? What about oneself? What is the use of formulating opinions about sages, saying this one is like that and that one is like this? That does not help one in sadhana or attaining liberation in any way whatsoever. First, one should find out oneself. And then you can tend to the mukti of others. In reference to Ganapati Muni, specifically in his Ramana Gita, which speaks of jnana and upasana and the relation between them, or the distinction between them. Bhagavan said, some say that jnana, knowledge, and upasana, devout meditation, are the two wings with which to fly to mukti, to liberation. What is jnana? What is knowledge? What is upasana? What is devout meditation? Jnana is ever present. That is the ultimate goal also. When an effort is made, the effort is called upasana. When it is effortless, it is jnana, which is the same as mukti. Jnana means knowledge. What sort of knowledge is this? It is knowledge of oneself. It is therefore non-objective knowledge. It is knowledge in which the triadic difference of knower, knowing, and known does not exist. It is knowledge that is ever present. What for you is ever present knowledge? Is it not that you always know your existence? And the consciousness which knows the existence is the existence itself. When you strive for this with effort, this is being called upasana, devout meditation. When you realize in knowledge that the knowledge itself is the sole existent reality, it is effortless. Note that the sadhana or practice is not termed effortless. The jnana or knowledge is effortless. One should strive with all of one's effort to realize that which, being innate, is effortless. A visitor said some superior power must help us to shake off the externalities. Sri Bhagavan said, "Who sees the externalities?" If something external to yourself seems to draw your mind outward, ask yourself, who sees the externalities? The power to draw the mind does not lie in objects, which are only dreamlike creations within one's own mind. That being so, the mind only drags itself, and it drags it nowhere else but in itself. But go higher with this still. Who sees the externalities? All of this is only for I, and has no existence apart from the I. Who am I? Do they say that they exist? If so, let the world say that it exists. The world of objects never declares its own existence. You just suppose such, according to whatever state of mind you're in. Dream objects in a dream world in a dream state. Waking objects in their interactions in the waking state. The world does not assert its existence. You merely conceive that there is a world. And once you're misidentified with the body, it seems as if external to that body. But none of that is true. In truth, there is nothing external, and no world has ever been created. If there is an I, there is this. If the self is egoless, it is worldless. For the unborn, there is no creation. Bhagavan said, again, if the world is a projection from the interior, it must be recognized that it is projected simultaneously with the I thought. Either way, the I is the fundamental basis, knowing which all else is known. The I is the fundamental basis, knowing which all else is known. Continuously and deeply inquire into the nature of I. Apparently, Ganapati Muni used to say that it's difficult to move forward, but impossible. It's easy to move forward, but impossible to move backward. That is, to go towards that which is objective is easy. To turn inward, which he calls falling backward, is difficult. Bhagavan resolves this by saying, however far one goes, there he is. Where is moving backward? The self is not in front of you and the self is not behind you. Who are you? It's easy enough to go to Indra Loka, world of Indra, the chief of the gods, Ganapati Muni says, but not to go within and find the I. That's difficult. Difficulty is only apparent. It is not real. Who are you but the self, always? There is no chasm separating yourself from yourself. Bhagavan concluded by saying, the same truth is contained in the mantra in Isha Upanishad. It's verses 4 and 5 out of the Upanishad. I did not bring a copy of it with me. Do we have a copy of it? Could you get it? The 8 Upanishads, Volume 1. Actually, you could read it aloud. Can you give it to Shashti, please? Verse 4 and verse 5.
It is unmoving, one, and faster than the mind. The senses could not overtake it, since it had run ahead. Remaining stationary, it outruns all other runners. It being there, Mata Vishva, allots or supports all activities. That moves, that does not move. That is far off, that is very near. That is inside all this, and that is also outside all this.
When that itself is both the inside and the outside, all pervasive to the extent that there remains nothing distinct to be pervaded, all the moving and the unmoving, remaining ahead of all, as it were, yet also behind all, always right where you are, and everywhere, the infinite and the eternal. What Ganapati Muni and others were finding with Sri Bhagavan, what was found by the ancient rishis in the Vedas, who brought forth such things as the Upanishads, is the same thing that you can realize here and now, in this very life. It is the same eternal truth, Sanatana Dharma. And when you realize that which was spoken then in the days of the Upanishad, that which was revealed in his silence and in his words by Sri Bhagavan, when you realize this for yourself, you are having the darshan of all the holy sages. It is Atma Darshan. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Shanti.